Hey folks, I'm hoping to start a backyard nursery soon, and here are some things which I'm considering. You need to know what type of business you're going to have. You need to know how you're going to have space to put enough plants. You need to know how you're going to set up your area to know how to propagate the type of plants you want to grow. So you need to also know what type of plants you want to grow. You need to know what kind of supplies you need with the type of plants you're trying to grow. And you also have to figure out a timeline because some plants you may start from seed, others from cuttings, and you need to know how long it takes to go from seed or cutting to market. You also need to know how to market your plants because what's good having all this inventory if you have no way to sell them? And you need to know the legalities on getting everything set up. With that, let's begin. We're going to start on type of business. You can set it up as an online business where you would sell via online venues. You could be selling from your own website, or you could be doing both. You can also have a retail setup where you're selling them with an open storefront, or you could throw plant sales, or even sell at farmers markets and trade shows. You could be a wholesale plant nursery and you sell to other sellers, or even to landscapers, or to both. You could also do a combination of online, retail, and wholesale. And now you also need to consider what space do you have and how you're going to more efficiently manage it. You need to have a place to propagate the plants effectively. You need a place to keep the extra inventory when you have plants as you propagate more and you have others waiting to grow. And you want to know, are you going to be using small tropical plant seedlings versus larger outdoor shrubs and trees, because that will affect the space that you need. You also have to look at your setup. You need plant grow racks, a greenhouse, maybe even a shade house. And you have to look at the soil and the composting you're using, propagation bins if you need some. Or if you're doing aquatic plants, you may need a pond, maybe a bog if you're growing carnivorous plants. And you also have to have places for plants to grow. Now, determining what plants to focus on is contingent on the type of green thumb you have. Some people are better at growing some plants than other plants. So, for example, you may want to focus on small tropical plants. They can be grown in small spaces. There are so many different rare plants to choose from, and they're great for selling online. Shrubs and trees can cater to landscapers, but they require a lot of yard. If you're growing herbs and vegetables, those are items that are really popular at farmers market, and common herbs sell well. You could focus on lesser known herbs or specialty herbs, but you'll need a special buyer for those because the average Joe on the street would not care to buy what they're not familiar with. And then specialty plants, for example, carnivorous plants, you could focus on iridescent plants, or even mushrooms, or aquatic plants, or some other form of specialty plants, or you could focus on just like succulents, for example. As far as supplies go, you need to know the right growing media for the plants you're growing. You could use mulch, and that would have a lot of stuff to help aerate the soil. Concurrently, if you're using a smaller setup, you could use perlite. You could also use compost, which acts as a nutrient for the plants. It's nice organic matter. And sphagnum or peat moss as a way to soak up water. Concurrently, you can use cocoa peat, but this way you have something to keep the soil moist. As far as pot sizes and shape go, you have round pots and square pots, but you want to limit the amount of sizes you have, so you don't want like 10 different sizes. Maybe about 3 is a good amount. The round versus square, the round ones are typically what you find. The square pots you can cram more plants in an area than you can with round pots. You have a lot of dead space with round pots. You also want to know the different pot sizes, and the price, because a plant in a larger pot size can be the same size as a plant in a smaller pot size, but it can sell for more. Now, you don't want to be a dishonest nursery grower and, just put tiny seedlings in larger pots, but you need to put a plant based on its size into an accordingly sized pot and then price it accordingly. You also want labels so people know what plants they are. You want some you can have that stick in the soil. You have others that are stuck on the container, and those are better because sticking in soils, those can be mismatched, and you don't want to mislabel your plants. You can also grow some around the plant. You have the ones that wrap around, and these are typically done with trees and shrubs. But you also want to include plant descriptions. If you have like a little plaque with the plant or something showing a picture of it in bloom if it's not, or talk about the plant, and that can get customer interest to where they'll be like, yeah, this might be worth trying and buying, or buying and trying. You also want fertilizers for your plant because that helps produce healthy plants, and it can increase the plant size and also shorten the length of time at which it takes to go from seedling to market. You want to know the right pesticides to keep invasive insects and things off your plants. You also want to use stuff to inhibit fungus and disease. And now we get to a timeline. You have to know how long does it take the plants you're growing to get large enough to sell. So you have to look at when you propagate, then you have to use propagation bins, propagation racks, depending on your setup, and allow them to acclimate from a humid environment if you were propagating from cuttings, or even with seed starter cells, the humidity dome. And after that, you have to allow time for growth. You want to repot seedlings, and you want to give time for them to grow and get large enough to sell. You don't want to sell a tiny little plant that is going to die on the customer and they'll be unhappy. And then you have to also plan for expansion. So these are the 3 steps for getting started. And then you keep cycling this thing. So as you have plants growing, you start propagating more. And then you need to have the room to keep the plants. And if you want thousands of plants, to have enough inventory to sell. And then you need to be selling them, so you have to market the plants. You can sell on social media. You can use Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. Nextdoor is a good place as well. Or even in some Facebook groups, you have some in your area that may be geared towards plants. You can use online venues such as eBay, Etsy, even Aquabid if you're doing aquatic plants, or even through your own website. You could sell locally from a driveway or backyard plant sale, a farmer's market. You can have some plant meetup groups, and even some trade shows and plant shows. You can even retail your plants at the farmer's market. You can even have like specialty plant store or nursery. You can market it at trade shows as well. And you can wholesale them to garden centers, local hardware stores, even if you have a mom and pop hardware store that has some plants. Those would be great ones to sell to as well. Landscapers. And now we get to the legalities. You have state regulations that you need to look into. So you want to contact your state Department of Agriculture. Typically, they'll want you to have a permit, and that allows for an inspector to come out and look at your setup once a year and make sure you have no invasive pests. You want to also get permits if you're selling to other states. Now with permitting, you also want to look at city permits, and that includes the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city, which is usually a mile to 3 miles outside the city limits, because sometimes the shenanigans going on just outside the city limits can affect the residents in the city limits. So cities have jurisdictions slightly outside their city limits. And then you want to look at county permits if the counties require any permits for what you're doing, whether you're building a greenhouse, a shed, or to sell plants. And then you have to look at your business structure. Are you going to be a sole proprietor where your social security is going to be your basically double as your tax ID number? Are you going to go into a partnership with someone if you have a business partner? Or are you going to set up your business as a limited liability corporation, which would probably be the better way to do it? And it's easier to do it by yourself, but if you're married and you want to do it as a couple, you can put a second person as an LLC with you. And that gives you a tax ID number, which to me is more secure. It inhibits someone from suing you personally. Let's say they bought a mislabeled plant or something happened in your nursery and someone got injured. So that is the venue that I would recommend. Of course, you'll have to file paperwork once a quarter, which is a simple form or something. And then you have to look at taxation. You need a seller's permit if you're going to be collecting sales tax. And you have to consider your expenditures relative to your sales so you know how much profit to claim when filing taxes. And now we get to the additional information. Please provide those in the comments below to help other viewers if you have any information that I overlooked. Thanks for watching, happy planting, and make sure you hit that subscribe button.